Hey man,
What's going on, buddy?
what's happening, dude?
And you're real close up, and I'm far away. What's going
Hold
on?
on.
Or
Well,
is
I
that
mean, I,
just my?
I don't know, man. We're recording. Who knows? We can just roll with it, man.
It's what we do best.
Yeah, dude, it's so good to see you, man. It's so good to talk to you.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. I actually talk a lot. I actually tell a lot of people about the time that I got to work with you, with your PMO stuff. And I'll tell you something. There's something you told me a long time ago that I've carried forward,
Hmm.
and actually I put it as a development thing, that you told me about was being a change agent. Um, and I don't know if you remember ever telling me that, but that's who I you're the person I associate with being a change agent, too. And I'm always like, yeah, man, this guy Aaron, he was telling me this stuff and he was giving me some great advice around being a change agent and making sure that like I'm always keeping things going and moving forward. And I put that on my annual, like, Mike's leadership. What am I, Mike, going to do personal
Right.
development every year is be a change agent.
Well, you've embraced it for sure. I mean, I follow you obviously professionally and then personally, and seeing you with the family and doing new things every year. And I'm following you, going, "What's Mike trying next?" Uh,
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm going to try that. Or I'll reach out to you, right? I'm like,
Yeah,
hey,
sure.
give me some advice on some of this new stuff you're doing. So
Yeah.
it's definitely beneficial both ways.
Yeah. It's good. So, why did I want to talk to you today? I really wanted to let's talk about change. Let's talk about digital transformation. Um, those are two things that I think I always, look back and see that you've done in your career, a number of projects where you've done that. And
Right,
so
right.
I just wanted to pick your brain, have a conversation about it, see what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So, not to sound like an interview, right? But the last probably 8 years has really been focused on, like any industry and any organization, is digital transformations, right? And so that's been my primary focus, more so than going around standing up PMOs or
Sure.
resurrecting a defunct PMO. And with that has brought change, a more focus on how we manage from a traditional PMO to more of a digital PMO or digital product office using best practices of Agile. And so that's really been my focus, not only kind of morphing the traditional PMO into something more focused around how do we manage our Scrum teams across our product portfolio, right?
Sure.
Forget about the traditional projects. We have ongoing products that we need to align to our vision, our objectives, and so I've been doing that for the last couple of years at Neiman's. And obviously, we've been in the news. We've gone through our own transformation, coming out of bankruptcy recently, and really being a lot leaner and
Hmm.
focus on our future. And it was kind of cool. I don't know if you saw in the press here recently, we acquired a tech company. I
Yeah.
mean, who in retail, especially luxury retail, goes out and buys a tech company? But it
Sure.
was a company we were already using for kind of our digital merchandising.
Right.
And so we looked around at other companies and felt we already had this partnership. And obviously, if we brought them into the fold, we would have some influence and
Right.
be able to, move forward with better experience in our digital merchandising and our outfitting experience with our customers online. So,
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, who does that? People that want to survive, I think, today.
yeah,
I mean, especially, I mean, I don't even, you don't have to get into the details, but I can't imagine how hard of a year it's been for you guys with COVID, things shut down and not having, physical space and, that whole retail angle of it from that perspective.
yeah, we were really fortunate in the sense that we were on the brink of already releasing more of an internal app for our sales associates,
Hmm.
our stylists. And so that enabled them to sell remotely. In a
Oh,
nutshell,
cool.
has way more features and benefits. But to your point, the stores were shutting down, and we used that catalyst, kind of that tipping point, to focus on that and get that out the door quickly. And we did, right? We used that opportunity. A lot of larger companies, sometimes if you don't have that kind of constraint or to that push, you'll sit there and just kind of overanalyze everything. And, I don't know if the stylist will like this. It was like, we have no choice, right? It's either we adapt or we're going to go out of business. And so everybody embraced it, focused on it, and we came out stronger than ever. So
that's really cool to see a company that has a DNA and has like a footprint as something that's not, in the digital realm, but taking this opportunity instead of just figuring out, like sitting back and going, okay, well, we're just not going to do anything, or we're just going to wait this out or whatever, and saying, you know what, we're going to like challenge this. We're going to go full in on this problem that's in front of us, and we're going to figure out how to solve it, and move quickly. And I think that's where a lot of the, digital transformations for companies get a little sideways, is that they get so hung up on, perfect, right? Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I think that's something else you used to say all the time too in the PMO office. But it's like you go through these iterations of like, well, are we doing this the right way? And it's like, well, just go small, start small, and then go big, because otherwise if you sit back and wait for big to happen and you do a big bang, you're screwed. You're not going to have a product that anybody cares about.
I think these digital transformations have to be coupled with a culture change around agile versus, waterfall and waiting to have all the requirements and vetted, and then you've lost the opportunity. So for me, it's kind of been a good marriage to doing digital transformations, start to change the mindset of design thinking a lot sooner rather than waiting on requirements, and iterating right through what you're trying to produce.
I think for me, that's always been the hard part, is that because I've adopted that same mentality. It's like when somebody puts something in front of us, especially now, it's like, what can I build this week? That's what's immediately in my head. What can we build this week? And you go through that iteration of, we could think about future proofing and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, well, if you want to future proof something, then you're going to need to take a long time, to figure stuff out. Nobody has that. So let's do stuff that's agile enough, in terms of development or process that we want to do, that we can then quickly change later, right? And I think you're right in saying, if you start that culture, if you start that mentality in the agile approach to stuff, that when you do have to change something later, that's a big change. It's not a big deal. Like, people are already expecting that in, a month, the thing I just built is going to change. Right. And not change for change's sake. It's not just like people are just willy-nilly throwing stuff, but it's like, you didn't have time to vet it out fully, so you need to be able to respond.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing, it was when Agile was coming to mainstream 8-10 years ago, you still had a lot of the mentality of the fear to fail. And so that really held back Agile, because you have to embrace failure, right? And then iterate till you get it right. And early on, it was still very much everyone was accountable for a deliverable that we have to hit this date, and it was so date driven that you never got the full opportunity to see the benefits of Agile. And now you're seeing that encouragement from leadership. Go out and try new things. Fail fast, learn, and try again. So it really helps for the adoption of that new way of doing work. I mean, it's still the same work. Work hasn't changed. It's if anything, it's gotten more complex, and you're bringing different talent from all over the world. That's something new that we're doing at Neiman's. Is we have no plan to actually go back into an office. So all our team is dispersed across the U.S. And so, yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, the remote working thing, I think I've said this on another podcast, and I'll just for the benefit of standalone
yeah,
here. The remote working for me has been probably the best uh, change in my life that I think I've ever had in my career, um, both professionally and personally. And on the
mm-hmm.
personal side of it, my kids are at an age, my kids are not too far off in age from your kids. I get to see them all the time, and I wasn't
Yeah,
able to see them all the time before. And I get to see changes or activities or things that they do, and see them grow over the last year. And I couldn't do that when I was working from the office. And then also just in terms of like stress and health and so forth. I mean, I don't know that I've been, you know, age age related issues aside, I don't know that I've been, this healthy before. I mean, I work out every single day. There's no excuse for it.
yeah,
I can go work out at lunch, which I usually do, except on Fridays for podcasting. Um, but I'll go work out at lunch, and then when I get done with my workout, it's like I don't have to take a shower. I don't have to put on a suit
yep,
and tie. We worked together when we were having to wear suits and ties to work every day, and it was just like, you know. Um, and just being able to like have some freedom and autonomy to just, in the morning when I get up, I actually start my day earlier than I
mm-hmm.
normally did because I'm not commuting anywhere. I'm not trying to do a bunch of stuff around I'm not like trying to cram in a day's worth of
Right.
laundry and then dishwasher loading and
Before
all
you
that
head to
stuff.
the office, I know, I remember
Yeah.
those days.
And so then it's like, okay, well, I'm not having to do all that crap, and so now I'm able to spread it out throughout the day, so I'm not stressed out
Yeah,
about it. I'm not worrying about it. It just gets done. When the pool guy comes to fix something or maintenance, I'm not having a special ask off or anything like that.
yeah,
It's just happening. Like life's happening around me. I'm still doing tons of work. I'm working longer hours. I think I'm getting a lot of quality stuff out of it. Um, I don't want to go back to the office, and I think our company's asked several times, in some surveys about it, and there are people that do. And
mm-hmm.
we're a global company, so it's one of those situations, and we sell remote working software. Plug for that.
Yeah,
Uh, and so, it's like I don't really need to go back to the office. I kind of don't. I don't feel like I need to. There are certain times where I think I'd want to get in a room, you know,
yeah,
get around a whiteboard with a group of people to problem solve. But that's not every day, you know.
no, no.
And those can be planned, you know.
Well, and at first, I think it took me a good 6 months to really embrace it. Um, and prior to the pandemic, I used to think a day or two from home would be my sweet spot
Yeah,
uh, per week. And so it took a while because the one thing that I feel is still missing for me was the opportunity to sit in a meeting or a discussion because we had all our scrum teams in conference rooms down this long hall, so you could literally pop in and out.
sure.
And I don't get necessarily invited to every meeting, but it was nice that if I just happened to stumble into a conversation, a meeting,
Right.
and would just learn new things that I didn't know were going on. That's the one thing that is still hard to accomplish remotely is not knowing what you don't know or meetings to attend
Yeah.
where you can learn about something else going on in the organization. So it makes communication that much more important,
Yeah.
to help that.
Yeah, I've seen where to correct for that. I've seen in the last year where I'm over invited to meetings.
Yeah,
Um, and so my calendar, if I don't manage it, at first I wasn't managing it. I was just like, oh my God, I gotta be at every, and it was like, I was on calls from 7 a.m., sometimes 6 a.m. until 6, 7 p.m. because of time zones, because I'm on European time in the morning with all my European colleagues. And then like I do central time work for a couple hours. And then I'm on,
wow,
West Coast time, for all my California colleagues. And I think our folks in Europe are doing kind of the same thing, right? Their mornings were a
yeah,
little like more relaxed because it was just them. But then like from noon or from mid morning our time on noon their time, they're just like meeting. Um, and I think it's taken some discipline, but I've had to go back and start to either delegate or just go to the meeting organizer and be like, what's the agenda?
Mhm.
What are the goals of this call? And what are the expected outcomes? And I look at those and go, I will reply back and say, there's nothing on there this week that involves me. I'm not coming to the meeting. I don't need to be there,
Yeah.
Um, but I think that is a big challenge. I think we all have to sort out is that thing you're talking about from the office of just
Yeah.
like being able to
Yeah.
hear, you know, we had the open office, scenario, which was, I think, proven not to work uh, by some scholar. But, you just overhear somebody say something and you're like, oh, hey, I know about that. I can help you with that. So we've relied more
Yeah.
on things, like chatting tools, collaboration tools like that. And also, a cool one for us is on Fridays. I'll do. Our team has just like a brainstorm just session. So every Friday afternoon, we just have time booked. If you show up, you show up. If you don't, you don't. It's cool, but it's just like an open invite to come in to a
Yep.
meeting with some random idea that you have or problem you're trying to solve. Throw it out to the team, and there's usually somebody that represents a lot of the different areas of our digital team, and we'll go to town. Sometimes it's a 30-minute call, and then a couple weeks ago I think we lasted till like almost 6 o'clock on a Friday. But
Oh
we
my
were,
gosh.
but it wasn't like it was a bad thing. Like we were
Yeah.
rolling. We were just like we were
Oh
in
yeah.
it. And as soon as 6 o'clock was over, I'm working from home, laptop closed. Hey family, let's have dinner. you know
Yeah, I love that. I don't miss the Friday commute home, and when it's always the, heaviest traffic is Friday evening
yeah,
coming home, and, you waste an hour. So yeah, I definitely love that part of it.
yeah. So, well, let's talk projects. Let's talk a little bit about
Ah,
projects and like, I mean, what this is something I always struggle with. It's like how to even start and begin with a project process. Like thinking about there's so many frameworks out there and ways to do stuff.
yeah,
How do you, when you don't have anything, you don't have a foundation, when people are doing stuff on spreadsheets, people are doing stuff in other systems or whatever, where do you start to kind of eat that elephant of how do you come up with a framework for a group to start project management?
yeah. And I'll just refer to here recently at Neiman's, same thing. They tried Agile, particular scaled Agile, a couple of years back, kind of failed miserably for whatever reason. And this time around, we really kind of started backwards.
Yeah.
So our biggest pain point was we were planning in silos. And I think that resonates with a lot of companies. But we were building more products. So we
Hmm.
were onboarding more Scrum teams. And I think you'll find when you only have a handful of Scrum teams, it's real easy to manage just using your basic Scrum methodology. It's focused on the teams. But what we started to see is that grew from 4 Scrum teams to 6 Scrum teams was the disconnect on what our objectives were for that quarter. So, Scaled's got a great framework and roadmap. And, my recommendation is never to be a purist in one thing, right? Every company is going to embrace different pieces. We used, Scaled from obviously more of an enterprise. And so our biggest problem at the time was, again, information is not, as far as objectives, teams weren't being aligned. So we said, hey, let's have big room planning, or PI planning is the formal name. And we said, great, let's bring everyone together. Let's plan out what we're going to do for the next 6, 7 sprints, for the quarter,
Yeah.
and let's get it up on the board. And so we had our first one about a year ago, maybe a little longer, maybe a year and a half. And we brought everyone, and it was our one and only where we're all 160 people in a big room. It's a great environment. It's downtown Dallas. We had, had all different colors, had a slide. I mean, it had everything going
Yeah.
on. So it was very entertaining. And we brought everybody together, and we we set out with our objective of very simple objectives, and then let the teams break out and come up with how they were going to meet that. And we really refined that. And then the next one was the the next one was the pandemic hit. So now I was tasked with go figure out how to do this virtually.
Yeah.
And so finding some tools and applications, but I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I was so stressed. I didn't think there's any way we were going to have the quality, the
Yeah.
engagement with everybody being remote, 160 people. But surprisingly, it was very fruitful. And then the next one even got better. What we found was we had to be more structured in those breakout sessions. You know, before when you're in person, you just kind of give everybody a time box and say, you know, go work out what you're going to do for next sprint and then come back together. Well, we tried that approach remote and it didn't really work out. People were needing, especially, you know, you have shared resources like your architects and things of that nature that have to be in, you know, multiple places at once sometimes. And so when they were constantly being pinged to join this call or in this chat, it didn't work. So the following one, we basically sequenced the breakout sessions so that everyone could participate. It was almost like when you go to a conference and you see a list of the meetings going on. Well, it was by our product teams talking about their objectives and people being able to ask questions or provide more insight. And then people would go away and we'd have downtime for the teams to come back together and kind of plan it out across their team board and get it into the Scrum board. So we found that worked perfect for us. But going back to your question, I think once we figured out our problem was we're not all on the same page as far as what our organization objectives are. We started with PI planning and bringing everyone together. And then it just started growing because now we're all on the same page. We're being more efficient with our resources. We're able to do more, get more out the door, and we started measuring it. And then we started dialing up our product teams. They start growing. And so we've been able, by kind of following that framework, keep everybody aligned. And I guess also what that forced us to do was to now move our process to the front or the top of the funnel. Because now we need to collect our objectives across the entire organization. Before it was just really centered around IT and product, but now we needed to broaden that top of the funnel, get the business objectives and massage those through we call pre-planning before we move into our PI planning or big room planning event. So it made it a lot more efficient in the quality of the output. And that way, when Sprint 1 started, we didn't skip a beat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you just described like the nirvana state of planning. I don't know that I've ever seen that fully happen somewhere. That I'm just like totally geeking out here.
Yeah. I mean, even leadership that have, you know, obviously have been at other organizations where they have Agile, the way our team came together, I mean, they were like, because at the end of the week, we do, and that's another thing with being remote, we had to, typically it's a 2, maybe 3-day event tops, but we had to spread it out a week, being remote, and, you know, sequencing those breakout sessions caused us to go out a couple of days. But the last day we bring all our leaders together and we go through, kind of walk the wall of each product team. And then we have our delivery team partners also weighing in to kind of give their fist of 5. You know, how comfortable are you with what we've gone over the last week, you know? And it's great dialogue and interaction. But at the end, our senior leaders are going, I have never consumed so much information and felt so comfortable with where we're going than through these series of events in our PI planning. So I want to record it and just show others. I mean, when I talk to them about how efficient, and I mean, they're just kind of like, I don't know if I believe you, but it really is.
So let me ask you that. I mean, is it, there's kind of two parts of this, and two things I want to touch on, and I'll say them out loud and we can talk about them separately. But like, one being, how much of it do you think is the team that did this with your specific team? I mean, was that the critical component or the secret sauce in getting this to work? And then 2, you talked about the time bound aspect of this. And I want to explore that in a minute of just kind of like how long does remote working and remote environments, does it lengthen, does it actually really lengthen, or does it feel like it perceives, is it a perceived lengthening of time it takes to do some of the things like planning or projects and things like that? So,
Right.
but we go either direction, but team, I mean, is that the secret sauce of your success on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was more kind of starting with the Scrum teams, specifically my Scrum masters, and educating them on the process and managing these breakout sessions and managing their Scrum team through this PI, 5-day PI planning session, because they became change agents for the rest of the team. Because obviously, I can't be everywhere,
Yeah,
and so they had to kind of carry the torch and educate others. And the other thing was the timing of the next quarterly planning and where the pandemic hit only gave us maybe 3 weeks to get ready to virtualize our
sure.
big room planning. And so I couldn't train everyone in the organization.
Right.
So the Scrum Masters became the de facto change agents.
Yeah.
And for us, that's the only way we're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And we're successful.
Yeah. Well, I think it also goes back to the importance of process, right? I mean, you're
Yeah.
following a very like trusting the process, even when you feel like the process is maybe failing you, or it's not catching on, but trusting that the process will net out, the results that you're looking for.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, and you know this well, is you can't, you know, you can't uncover every little thing.
Right.
You got to stick to the big rocks and really focus on that and capturing the right quality of data and amount of data, if that makes sense,
Sure.
because we all know if it's crappy data coming in, you're going to have bad results coming out. And so, we, again, really focus on the things that we're identifying in PI. Do they align to the objectives?
Yeah.
And the ones that maybe didn't, really get those out of the way. Focus on the big things, the big rocks, things that are going to be the needle movers. Um, and then, still, even the first one, there was a little bit of carryover, into the first sprint, kind of still doing a little bit of design here or there and figuring out a few remaining things. But by the third quarterly planning that we got to, we knew to invest heavily in the pre-planning.
You're right.
So that made the quality of our 5-day PI planning even more fruitful.
Yeah. That's cool. The bad data in, bad results thing. I struggle with that one because it always seems like in the projects where we get hung up the most is trying to perfect the input, right? It's like going back and saying, okay, well, all things considered, we know that, let's talk data sets. Like if there's data sets or there's process or something that we know is broken, but we know where it's broken and we know it's how it's broken. And rather than we don't have the time or the resources or the people that buy in to fix that thing. We need to build something on top of it, on some that's broken. We know that it's broken, but I think acknowledging that and just still moving forward, that's the one that always gets me, is that it's trying to get people to stay motivated to continue to build on top of something that we know may be broken, but we can't go back in time for a lot of reasons and go back and fix that, right? It may just be
Yeah.
that my company is a growth through acquisition company, right? And so over the last few years, and we've, since I've been there 6 years now, and we've acquired a lot of companies, and with that comes
Oh,
all of
yeah.
their good and bad, and multiple systems, right? I mean, they were a company, they need their own set of systems. So things like trying to integrate websites, right? It's like trying to take their platform of websites and our platform of websites and make them work together, integrate them in and close theirs down and put it all in ours, and trying to figure out like, okay, what are the battles I want to fight here, um, and what makes sense. Um, but it always seems like teams get so hung up, and I spend all of my time really trying to pull people out of the weeds of the stuff that we can't change, that we know is bad, that we
But
have to
you can't.
also build on top of.
Yeah, and you can't wait for it to be good, right? So
Right.
you gotta send your UI UX people
Yeah.
ahead, right? They got to start, and obviously underlying architecture comes into play, right? The companies
Sure.
that embrace microservices are going to be a, a lot better at kind of moving forward while they still figure out the back end stuff.
Right.
There's little things, you instead of wait for the data sets, do you have the schemas, right? Things like that. But that's not really around process. Um, I think, and this is makes me think back to an earlier question, another kind of secret sauce. Um, Prior to trying to do big room planning or PI planning, we have obviously true defined product teams, right?
Hmm.
This is like Twilio, our communications hub. That's a defined product. It's a platform. But what we did to make or a successful enterprise planning, we had kind of these ancillary teams. They're equally important, but they're not a true product team. So we have our enterprise data analytics team.
Okay.
Okay, so our data scientists and our reporting, which is typically more of a managed service, we started treating them like true products as much as you can, but having dedicated Scrum teams. And those Scrum masters would report up through me so that we had consistency in our process, our reporting, and sharing of best practices. So by having some of these teams now as part of the bigger group, we were able to plan a lot faster because traditionally, people would get through planning and then, oh, okay, we need to touch base with our data team, or and then come to find out, oh, maybe we've gone a little too far ahead on assumptions about our underlying architecture. And that was another positive by sequencing those breakout sessions. Is like I mentioned the architects, but it was our chief architect who brought up that it was so much more successful by sequencing, because now he got the big picture of everything that was going on in the upcoming quarter and
Sure.
could see some of possible roadblocks a lot sooner.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, you with that kind of plan, I mean, you align resources, you align budgets, you align, contracts that you need to get signed and systems you need to have in place and give people heads up of, you know, you need to be able to do this in Q3. And it's like, well, we need to start in Q1 to build the framework or backbone or change some stuff to get to Q3's results. So
yeah,
that's a big one with that piece.
and typically accounting and budgeting is always a lagger in embracing agile,
Sure.
because they still have the mentality of, what do I need to, how much is this project going to cost me? And
Right.
it's like, no, it's you're funding an entire team, and they're going to
Yeah.
work off what's in the backlog.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
that's how we need to plan capital, right? We have a dedicated 10 teams, 18 resources. Here's the blended rate. There's your budget.
Yeah.
And then we start to dial in, how much did a feature or functionality cost us? And so
Right.
that's kind of where we're working on as we mature the process across the organization.
Sure. Yeah. That tracking is pretty critical, I think, because there's a lot of that stuff that you look at in terms of uh, I I do it at a smaller scale because I don't have tons of people that report to me for the website of things. But for a website, I mean, I do that. I go through that process of how much is this feature going to cost me,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of times people look at it and say, well, Mike, like you're already paying for these resources. Those are sunk costs. There's
Yeah.
salaries involved and all that. I'm like, yeah, but there's still a time element to that and what they're going to do, and the trade off of if I build this feature or this function on the website, what's it going to do for us, right? If they spend 6 weeks building something for you, and then like 3 people use it, just because we're already paying their salaries doesn't mean that we should go do that. It's like
Right. Right.
we need to pull back and say what is the cost benefit of that feature, of that ad there. And there's some stuff that's just like you just have to do because it's just you got to do it. But
Yeah, like tech debt. I mean,
yeah,
you have to as technology changes, and
Yeah.
You got
I
to
mean,
do the refactoring.
right. Upgrades, design refreshes, things like that, that you look at it and you go, well, there's nothing really broken about this. And it's like, yeah, but it's time for a refresh, like
Yeah.
let's pay for the project to have some designers come in and move some boxes around, put some different drop shadows on something, change the colors of buttons, whatever, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds superficial and but when you do it, you're like, oh, like this is a whole new thing. I'm looking at something brand new, smoke and mirrors stuff, as I like to
Well,
say.
we're going through a lot of change. I mean, most organizations are. As now you're getting all this data, and we have our own really cool data science team, and we're working on our own special engine, and
Sure.
as we move down machine learning and
Yeah.
AI and all that great stuff. But it's been exciting to watch them now that they're part of the bigger product team now, to see all the good stuff that they're doing.
Yeah. We've done something similar. We built a an amazing digital analytics team, which has been good for me because I've been able to help enable them with the technologies and tools and stuff that we're, and how we deploy things.
Yeah.
But it started off kind of as a little bit of like a pet project that we would do in the spare time. To now it's a team that attends a regular, and it's coming from our digital team. They're attending regular, status updates with our ELT team about here's what we're seeing from all the things that we can measure from a marketing perspective. Which is the cool part, is that there's so
Uh,
much, everything we do in the digital space. It's like you can measure it, one way or the other, right? And so that's been fun to see and be a part of.
well, I read an interesting article the other day about all this data coming in, and it really challenged: is it the right direction to completely focus on mining the data and versus the traditional, getting out there and talking to the customer,
Yeah,
right? And seeing truly their interactions. I mean, obviously there's test groups and
sure.
control groups and stuff like that, but it reminded me, don't get so focused on just the data. There is a human aspect, and especially, and that's true for Neiman's, is we are a luxury retailer. It's about the experience. I mean,
Yeah,
I remember when I first started, it was right before the holidays, and being downtown for a meeting and then coming out of the conference room, and then going through the store, and you're just seeing the Christmas. And
yeah,
I mean, it's that magic, that only Neiman's can do. But how do you now do that online? It's
right.
kind of our new big challenge, is
Yeah,
bringing that experience online.
yeah,
So
that's
we
interesting.
have a plan. It's coming out. So
I won't have you divulge any kind of secrets on this call.
yeah, I like to keep my job.
There you go. Let's keep it high level. So let's talk about the time aspect. So you kind of talked about there's this, when you're in a room with everybody, you can do something in 3 days, but when
Right.
you're doing it remote, it takes like a week. I haven't found so far that things in my world are actually legitimately taking longer, but there's a perception from people that they think that they're taking longer to do something. And I think people still have it in their head that they're like, well, if we could just get in a room today, we could solve this
Yeah.
problem. And it's like, yeah, but if we just got in the room today, we still wouldn't have all the same resources that that can't attend the meeting or the answers that we need today. We would make speculations. And if you just let me have two or three calls with different people and the different teams that we need to get through this week, then on Monday of next week, we'll have that meeting in a shorter time in terms of like it's not 8 hours, it's going to be 2 hours, and we'll have all the answers and we'll be able to knock this thing out. And I look at it as like, I've had to change my mentality and looking at it from like full days of stuff that people are doing to saying, I'm doing all this work, but I'm doing it in more of like these microtransactional sections, right? Like I'm doing a 30-minute call with this person to get
Mm-hmm.
information. I'm doing an hour with this person, 2 hours with this person, and it ends up being still less than 8 hours. And then I have the final call and it's 2 hours. It takes me a week and a half to do that, but an overall like impact to the business and like timing of projects, it feels like the remote thing hasn't really affected that in my world. So I wanted to get your perception and see if you've seen any of that stuff.
Definitely on the planning. Like I said, we went from a in-person 2 day to really a 4 day because we still leave the last day for walk the wall. So we doubled it. But I will tell you, the data that I've collected from our first in-person big room planning, PI planning, we were kind of like coming out with like 8,000 features
Yeah.
across 20 teams. And now that we've made it serial in the breakout sessions, our last BI planning was about 600 features.
Okay.
So we went from trying to grab everything to
Yeah.
being more focused on, we now know our objectives. And again, I think a lot of that was people couldn't be in certain breakout sessions before because they weren't there. And they
Sure.
were just relying on kind of migrating from table to table or being told, hey, I need you over there. So, the net was much wider and we got
Yeah.
so many features. And then obviously that kind of skews the metrics at the end of the quarter. You said you're going to go do 8,000
Yeah.
features, but you only got 500 done.
Yeah.
So I will say the quality of the output of our PI planning or big room planning is much better given we've doubled our time, went from a 2 day to 4 day.
Yeah.
So I can see it, I can measure that it's gotten better. And now we're kind of the same thing. Can we compress that to 3 day? And it makes sense. Dial it in, get it where you think you're about as optimized as you're going to be, and then see if you can compress it. Do I think we will ever get back to 2 day on a virtual big room planning? No. I think probably at best we can bring it in to 3 days versus the 4.
Yeah. That's cool. Be respectful of your time. Let's talk about something near and dear to my heart here around stress.
I thought you were going to say brisket, and I'm like, man, I can't afford it. I went to the store to get one, and it's like triple.
Well, we can talk about the brisket that I have smoking right now, actually.
Oh man.
Let's talk about stress levels and mental health in men, and it's a big thing that people don't want to talk about. And I'm going to start bringing this up more as I interact with more men, because it's something that a lot of us, I think, have silently dealt with over whether it be stress, anxiety, and how to deal with that. And a lot of people turn to bad habits and so forth to try and counteract that. Don't really feel like as a man you can talk about feelings and things like that. So I just wanted to ask you in terms of like stress. I mean, I can imagine the stress level that you're dealing with trying to coordinate all that you're trying to coordinate and manage what you're trying to manage, and the scope of work and so forth, and the teams and responsibility. What do you do on a weekly or daily basis, monthly basis? How do you disconnect? How do you manage like the shut off of work into go hang out with your wife and kids? And like, do you have any practices there at all?
I don't think it's as black and white, just a shut off.
Sure.
I think like you said earlier, and I do the same thing. I get started when I get up, grab a cup of coffee, check the emails real quick, and then go focus on getting the family fed and up and going, and then come back. And so I really apply that towards the end of the day as well. So it's not just 5 o'clock rule, shut it down. I think one thing, and before I go into, we're doing some organizational things as well. It's called ROW, results oriented work environment. So it's no more time, and it's really a culture shift to get away from, and the pandemic's forcing it. But prior, if someone, back in our day when we were at Children's, if someone showed up at 9, you'd give them hell a little bit. Where you been? What do you walk? And this is trying to remove that completely, and say, don't worry about how much time I put in, because there's ebb and flows to demand of your time, and just really focus on getting deliverables and results, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think for me personally, I do the same thing. I try to break away for the gym. and just let my mind decompose
Sure.
kind of everything for the morning. And then at night, I'll actually do yard work.
Yeah.
I think it's just that mind, everybody's like, why don't you pay someone to mow your yard? I like that mind numbing, I don't have to think about anything. I'm just out there with
Yeah.
my tunes going and just sweating.
Yeah.
And I think that helps.
That's funny. The yard work one. I I always have this joke that when I retire, I'm going to buy an El Camino if I can afford one because they'll probably be like super classic. And I'm gonna go mow yards for free for somebody. Like I don't older people don't care who it is. I'm just gonna have a route of people that I'm gonna go mow yards for. I used lawn mowing and I have as a way to decompress, and it was something that my dad made me do when I was a kid. He started off and was like, "You're gonna learn to mow the yard," and I hated it
Yeah.
at first, but then after a little bit, I was like, "This is awesome. Nobody messes with me. This is like I can be out there mowing the lawn and I can take an hour, I can take 2 hours, and there's not a single person trying to talk to me. They're not
Right.
asking for something. And especially now, with kids, they're not bringing me a broken toy. They're not asking me a question. Like my phone isn't vibrating. Like if it is, I can't feel it because the lawnmower's vibrating. Um, but I cherish those moments of like every
Yeah.
week. Luckily, I've got a huge yard, and my sister lives next door, and she's got a huge yard. So we got like a little over an acre between the two of us. And I get
Oh
out there on the
man.
riding lawnmower. I got me a nice zero turn lawnmower, and I just go. And I'm the same thing. It's just I have these crazy internal conversations with myself, and I'll play out um, scenarios of conversations. Like if there's something going on at work, right? If
Oh
I
yeah.
need to talk to an employee, or I need to talk to my boss, or have a hard conversation with somebody, like I'll kind of like play it out in my head. Like, what am I going to say?
Yep.
How am I going to approach this? And then I'll just like say it in my head a little bit. And I'm like, no, that's kind of shitty. I shouldn't say it that way. Like, let me back off and do it this way, and do it this other way. And the same with my wife, right? Like, if I need to have a conversation with my wife about something, or like my kids. It's like, how am I going to. So I use that time uh, to really just like decompress. And it's
Yeah.
it's cool to hear you do the same thing.
Yeah. I think the other thing that works for me because I tend to, if I don't have a little bit of closure, it will linger all night. I'll think about it. So
Sure.
it's stickies. If I can just capture something in the moment, write it down, because if I fear like if I don't write it down and I go to bed, I'm going to forget it the next morning. So I
Yeah.
think about it all night.
Yeah.
And so I found that I have that closure by just writing it down and then tackling it in the first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Helps me sleep a whole lot better.
Yeah.
Because
That's cool.
I'll just sit there like that. Oh, that to do, that.
Yeah.
I just put it on there. I know it's safe. I know it'll be there for me in the morning, and I can relax.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm big on list. And action list and task list, both personally and professionally. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
I've got, I do the old school thing. I've got three things I'm trying to solve today, right? And it's like I'm not going to stop working until I've done those three things. And
We've read the same book or
we
something. I do
have,
the exact. I have a magical. It seems like my goal every day will be like three or four things, and that could be two work, one
yeah,
personal, but I just without it, I don't get a sense of
yeah,
accomplishment for the day.
yeah,
I got to be able to check that.
yeah. Well, and I do that for home stuff around the house.
Yeah.
It's like doorknob's broken, or light bulbs need change, or you need to do this, or you need to fix the roof, or fix this or that, and it's like, and I do a lot of that kind of stuff because I like to do it. So I put it
I
on
do
the
too.
list, and it's like I write it on, I have to put it on the list, do this, do that, and then I'll, hey, I got spare time on Saturday. What's on the list? And it's funny because I actually have like a little chart where I do like, uh, I have put little money symbols next to it because like some of the stuff it's going to cost me money. Like, I've got to go to Home Depot and buy $1,000 worth of paint or something, or some ridiculous amount of wood these days. Um,
Yeah.
or it's like I have all the parts, I just need to do it. It's like, and I kind of have this little board of things that are around the house. It's like my wife is like, hey, there's, we need this. I'm like, put it on the list. Let's put it on the list. And I just check them off, go
Do
through
you
it.
find yourself like when you complete something, like maybe it's paint a room, which I did Early this year, I redid my daughter's room. It was kind of a muted pink, so I had to put like 2 layers of primer,
Yeah.
and then I did oil based on trim, the doors. I
Yeah.
mean, it was a job, but I mean, for days I would go up there, check it out. Anytime
Yeah.
I do something, I finish it. I'll walk by it, like look at it, like just makes you feel good,
Yeah.
makes you feel proud,
Yeah.
and then it's on to the next one. But I'll catch myself. I'm gonna walk over there and check out that work I did.
Yeah. Oh, I do that all the time. After I mow, I have like a little pattern where I will be blowing off the sidewalks, and there's one spot in the corner in the front where I'll stand and I'll just look across the yards because I mow
Take it
both the
all
front
in.
and I'm just like, looking good, lamb, looking good. And then I'll go in the backyard and I'll do the same thing. And I'm just looking around like, that looks good. I'm like, I need to trim that tree. I'm gonna trim that tree later. You know what? I got time. I'm gonna do it right now. you know. Uh, so I'm kind of the same. I mean, we'll do stuff around the house, and I'll just look at it like, man,
Yeah.
I did that. That looks good. And then people come on. I do the dad thing. Kids will be swimming in the pool and making hamburgers. I'm like, hey Bob, did you check out that playhouse over there? It's pretty badass, right? I built that. I make sure I say it loud, and their wives are like, Bob, why don't you build a
Oh yeah,
badass
I always
playhouse for our
joke.
kids?
Yeah. Why can't you be handy?
Oh, that's funny. Uh, Briskets. Let's talk about brisket, man. Um, so the only reason I have this brisket out here, Tom Thumb last weekend by my house had uh, it was like their normal like Tom Thumb sale where they like
Yeah.
if you punch in your number you get so much off.
Yep.
$102 for the brisket, marked down to 89 with their little thing. Then they're trying to incentivize you to download their app, which is stupid.
Yeah.
It doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
It's of no use to me other than it gives me discounts. And it had $1.99 a pound for brisket was the coupon. And so I
Wow.
got $102 brisket for $40.
Wow.
It was like $42 and some change.
I mean, that used to be the norm.
Yeah,
Was 250. You saw that sell almost like
yeah,
every week. Somebody, and now
yeah. It's $3.99, $4.99.
450. I've bought a few from Sam's, and now heck, they even have Prime,
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. But I'm not buying Prime at these prices. It's like $200 brisket. I'm like, no, no, no.
yeah.
I'll just go up to Railhead or something. And
Yeah, especially when you trim off you trim. I have a 20 pounder out there. I trimmed off about 5 pounds of fat. It's like, and it was supposed to be the choice cut and all that stuff. But I'm like,
right.
it's not any different than the other ones. But it was
Yeah.
cheap, so I don't mind cutting off 5 pounds of meat. But yeah, that's anyways. So any tricks or tips? We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
You
I'm
peach
like you.
paper
I
or
leave it
foil?
paper.
Okay.
I have the peach paper. I tried one recipe and I really liked it. I've done it a few times. So I use the coffee grounds.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll kind of leave them out from the morning so they're not super wet, and then kind of rub the brisket and obviously salt and pepper, and then I'll put the
Yeah.
coffee grounds and just rub it. It was really good.
Yeah.
Great flavor.
Yeah. I did that with the early on. I went through this phase where it was like every time I did a brisket, I was trying to do something exotic.
Yeah.
And then my wife's like, why don't you just do, they'd come out not great, she's like, why don't you just simplify it? And I'm like, you know what? You're right. So I'm watching all these videos with like Aaron Franklin and all these people, and they're
Yeah.
like, salt and pepper. That's it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, genius. Why am I not, why am I adding coffee grounds? Why am I trying to add paprika? I'm making all these rubs and buying all this crap. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
salt and pepper. So that's what I do, man. I last night I trimmed it up, got it all trimmed up. Salt. I mix kosher salt, and I have a coffee grinder I bought specific to grind up peppercorns, do fresh pepper, and mix it up together, just half and half, and just put it all over it. And then I saran wrap it and throw it in the fridge, and then that way in the morning it's easy just to unwrap it and throw it on the smoker. Um, and I'll put a
So
beer.
you do it. That's always my dilemma. It's, do I start it at night and just let it go
Yeah,
for an early, for a lunch, or do I get up at the crack of dawn?
yeah,
And I got a green egg, so I got to kind of,
yeah.
it takes a good 20 minutes to get the temperature to stabilize with
Right.
working the vent. But
So I
yeah,
have a
that's,
knockoff. I have a knockoff green egg, and that's just the ceramic one, and I'm using that. And yeah, same thing. So last week, on my last podcast, I talked to Stephen Gerhardt from Element Blue. He was telling me that when he does his brisket, he'll cook it to 165 the day before, pull it off, put it in the like
mhm.
wrap it and put it in the fridge, and then the day that he's going to do the event or whatever, he'll put it back on there and basically is just taking it from 165 to 204 and then pulling it off. And so it's half the time. 165 is cooked, like
Yeah,
technically. Like, I mean, you've
yeah,
cooked the
true.
meat, it's not,
Yeah.
there's not any bacteria or anything in there. There's nothing crazy. It's not rare. The only thing is you're just not rendering the fat, right? And that the point
Mhm.
from 165 to 204 is to melt that fat and make it really like render out of the meats. So he said he started doing that, and that way he knows how long it takes from fridge to 204
Yeah.
to cookable,
Wow.
and it's half the time. It's only a couple hours. He uses an easy bake Traeger oven, but I was like, man, I need to do that because I never can time these things, man. It's like it's done when it's done. You
Yeah.
know, it might be 11 o'clock at night. If you guys want to have some fresh brisket, get up and have some. But otherwise, you'll just have to reheat it tomorrow. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm typically holding up the family event. Everybody's over, ready for it, and I'm like, it's
yeah,
not. I thought it was, but it needs another hour, right?
yeah,
And then I don't get to cool it as long in the cooler and let it set up. But
yeah,
then I'm burning my fingers trying to cut it. It's so hot.
yeah. I've done the overnight before a couple of times, but man, just the next day, it's just like I'm exhausted. Like I just don't want to. I don't even want to eat brisket at that point. I'm just
Yeah,
like
it's
I'm
not even
done.
fun anymore.
So, anyways, I feel like we've covered a lot, man. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm might go try to have some barbecue this afternoon now that you've talked about brisket.
Yeah, I put that in your head. Well, I might have to go buy my own barbecue from somewhere and have this one tomorrow because it's slowly getting there, man. It's not where it needs to be temp wise for dinner, but yeah. So
Yeah. Well, it was great catching up, man. Good to see you.
yeah, it was good to see you, man. I really appreciate your time and all the advice you've given me over the years and
Oh,
the things you
well, thank you.
incepted in me when we worked together. Like I said, they're little seeds that have lasted a while. So I hopefully I can return the favor for other folks and when they're early on in their careers. So
Absolutely. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
thanks, man. We'll see you later.
Bye.